So Jeffrey Grosset from Grosset Wines in Clare Valley. 2011, widely reported as a tricky vintage, Jeff, and I know when I met with you in July you mentioned to me that in 31 years, the first vintage, all natural acidity across the board. Very excited about the Riesling, very excited about the Cabernet, but I am speaking, you tell me, about 2011 strengths and weaknesses for you in Clare Valley.
2011 ended up being a wonderful year for us. The Rieslings, as you mentioned, natural acidity. It was seen as by many as a late season, but in fact, when I got the time to check the records, the harvest times in 2011 for us anyway were the same as the average in the 1980s. So,
oh really?
So yeah. For us, after this is the 31st season for us, and as opposed to the 90s and some of the 2000 vintages that are early, it looks as though a natural swing in weather means that we're back into maybe a cooler cycle. And certainly 2011 was a later season than recently, but pretty much average for the 1980s, which of course we had a string of very good vintages from that decade.
Yeah, and if you think about it, everyone's been talking in the last, certainly 5 years, vintages are getting earlier and earlier, so in that sense, a bit back to previous patterns.
Yeah, well, I guess there are two things there without getting into too much detail, and as I see it, there's no question that humans are doing a lot of things, especially with CO2 in the world, but it's worth remembering that there are cycles, and we have El Nino and La Nina, which is a warm cycle, dry and cool, wet, and it appears that we're now into wet. Also, there are about 11-year cycles that go warm and cool, and there are 65-year cycles, and what appears to be happening is that we're into basically a cool cycle now for some years, and so this year was cooler and fairly wet for us, but not unusual for by European standards. So because we manage our vineyards on a European approach, that is, we set it up to allow for the possibility of a wet vintage, then really for us it was an extraordinary run. It was extraordinarily good because we got all the benefit of moderate weather, a little bit of rain, but that didn't bother us at all. Okay,
and talk me through your vineyards are set up for a European kind of vintage. What does that mean in practice?
Well, a lot of it's not that uncommon now in Australia, but two sets of foliage wise, so vertical shoot positioning. Okay. But then where shoots grow where they shouldn't, we take them out when they're quite short, this sort of stage, and then so we make sure that the canopy remains quite open, so we train it in an upward direction, so fairly strict looking hedge-like, which is the European style of the best producers anyway. Take out the shoots that shouldn't be there, so we keep it nice and clear for the air to circulate, make sure that we don't get disease. And then we go through, and if there's fruit in the wrong places or too much, we take it off. So it is really a grooming of the vineyard, and we see that as our version. It's funny, our version is that we see vineyards needing to be groomed because vines are cultivated, and it's important that we manage them the way we want to get the result, because sometimes they can decide to crop too much or too little or whatever. We need to deal with that, and we need to set it up so that we've got natural air circulation, so that we've got a natural hedge against disease, particularly downy and powdery mildew. So
which is quite rife in 2011 in the eastern states generally, but Clare Valley.
Yeah, we understand that I think with vineyards particularly where the canopy is a bit dense and the crop level is high, the risks were quite high because later in the season there was quite a bit of rain, and so you may not have had the opportunity to fully ripen a heavier crop. But if you had the crop at a low level and if you had canopy up and open and so that it would dry out, you should have been okay. When I say that, in our area, it was absolutely fine. I think other people found that where they were ripening late in the season, it may have been a bit of a challenge.
Yeah, and I know that you made rot work for you in 2011 because you made a noble rot Riesling for the first time since '99, I think.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So how many times in 31 years have you made a? I didn't even know you had made one.
I think it's, in 31 years, I think there have been 5.
Yeah.
And so the last one was 1999.
Yeah.
So the good news is that I think between the 11th and 18th of March we picked half of all the Riesling.
Yeah.
I think about another week later we had it pretty much all finished. And then literally 4 or 5 days later, with some fruit that we left, we found spots of botrytis. A few more days later than that we had nearly 100% infection. So we had the perfect conditions. The envy of anyone who wants to make botrytis, 100% basically botrytis infection, a great opportunity to produce a sort of clean, beautifully botrytised equivalent of a Trochanderon Auslese from Australia. And so we seized the opportunity, and it may not happen again for a long time, but what we've got is wonderful.
Yeah, and was it 500 bottles? Or 500 bottles or 500 cases?
Oh no, 500 cases.
500 cases,
so,
but we're not getting it in the UK. No.
Well, you know.
It's all those fans in Australia.
We yes.
In the front of the queue.
We'd like to. We take care of our customers and sell it all first, and then we'll send you what's left over. No, I'm sure we can get a little bit over here. They're only small bottles. We should get a few bottles over.
Okay, okay. And Jeff, bigger picture. 2011 was a vintage which, because of obviously Clare Valley, seems to have come off quite lightly with the rains in the eastern states. But in general, people reporting massive crop losses, and yet the overall crush, national crush, was 1.6 million tonnes, 1% up on 2010. I'm using June preliminary figures from the Winemakers Federation, but you know, Stephen Strachan talking about that's unsustainable. And, you know, what are your thoughts on where Australia goes with that?
Wow,
moving towards a sustainable future.
Yes, well, there's a lot in that. I was surprised.
Only a little question to end with.
I was surprised that it was 1.6. The general view, consensus is that the berries and bunches were larger in the fruit that was there, and so it was a larger crop than was expected. So despite a lot of fruit being left on the vine, there was still, and with new production, the total was still up around 1.6. I think the reality is that a lot of that is going to less expensive wines. So in terms of premium wine, the issue is going to be how much premium wine was made, how much that's going to enhance our reputation was made. And I think there's some, the best producers produce some extraordinary wine. I don't think it's perhaps quite as much as we would like as a country, but they are still there. And then we've got, we seem to have made plenty of the generic, and the reality, I guess, is that we need to move away from that, and we need to have wines that reflect the place and reflect, I think, accurately at least the variety. And this year wasn't that helpful for that, but the good news, I suppose, is that the vineyards that aren't so good are just going to be dealt with. They're already closing some down, pulling them out. People are walking away because they were encouraged into it when there was a boom, and it hasn't worked out.
Just not viable anymore.
Yeah. And I think, to be honest, the sooner that happens, it's not good for those individuals, but the sooner that happens, the better. And what's happened out of this season is that a lot of people have decided that this is not where they want to be, and they're moving on. The ones like us, I think, that have been around for 30 years or more, and even the more recent ones that have come in committed to premium wine, are clearly focused on the future, which looks quite exciting.
Great. Well, with that, I look forward to tasting the 2011 Rieslings. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.